Simple organisms were living on Earth over 3.5 billion years ago. And back then, huge mat-like colonies of them helped to build unique biological formations known as stromatolites, very similar to those seen here. Today, ancient stromatolites constitute a major part of the fossil record of our planet's earliest life forms. The first primitive organisms are thought to have resembled modern-day bacteria, and they were among the ancestral life forms that eventually gave rise to the countless species present on Earth today, as well as to the now extinct organisms that came before them. But regardless of whether they are bacteria, or elephants, mushrooms, or frogs, all living organisms share the same basic characteristics. First, they are all made of one or more complex units called cells. The second characteristic is that all living things use energy to carry out essential, life-sustaining processes. The third is that they are all able to maintain homeostasis, a balanced state of internal stability. The fourth is that all living things are able to grow. The fifth characteristic is that they all respond to stimuli. The sixth is that all organisms are able to reproduce. And the seventh characteristic is that Earth's diverse living things can adapt to changing environmental conditions through successive generations over time. Taxonomy, the science of biological classification, seeks to understand the complicated relationships that exist between the billions of organisms that now inhabit the Earth, as well as to determine how they are related to ancient, long-extinct organisms. Taxonomists place organisms into distinct classification groups based on shared characteristics, and they give these groups Latinized names in order to create useful categories that can be employed and understood by researchers all around the globe. Classification groups are decided upon by evaluating all sorts of information. That information includes such things as anatomical features, methods of obtaining nourishment, habitats, features of embryological development, the DNA-based sequences of genes, and the fossilized remains of long-lost ancestral life forms. Under the most widely accepted classification system, organisms are ranked according to their most general characteristics first, and then they are placed in a series of smaller and smaller, increasingly more specific subgroups. A tremendous amount of variation exists in modern taxonomy. However, the standard classification groups from the most generalized to most specific in descending order are domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. All living things are placed into any one of three very large groups called domains, because biologists think that billions of years ago, the ancient ancestral life forms began to evolve in two different and distinct ways. One branch gave rise to the domain of bacteria, from which the numerous subgroups of modern-day bacteria evolved, while the other branch gave rise to the organisms of the archaea domain and the eukarya domain. Yet, in spite of this basic division, bacteria and archaea are quite similar to one another in that both these domains consist of prokaryotes, organisms with non-nucleated cells. While in the cells of the eukarya, most of the genetic material is located in distinct nuclei. Bacteria and archaea are also similar in that both groups consist of microscopic, single-celled organisms. They tend to be fairly similar to one another in appearance, too. The big difference between these two domains is that the archaea possess numerous genes and biochemical pathways more closely resembling those of the eukarya, genes and pathways which bacteria don't have. The archaea include many organisms called extremophiles, so named because they are able to live under extreme conditions that would kill other living things. Some of the bright colors seen here in the boiling water of these hot springs are due to the presence of certain extremophile organisms of the archaea domain. In contrast to the simple unicellular archaea and bacteria, the majority, but not all of eukarya, are multicellular organisms that are of great enough size to be seen with the naked eye. And the eukarya domain consists of an extremely diverse collection of living things, including the organisms with whom we are most familiar, such as plants and animals.